Hey everyone. I don't like making videos about news, but after watching video after video of piecemealed information, thought it might be helpful to lay out what we currently know about the Legion Go as a whole. If you don't know what the Legion Go is, it's another PC handheld like the Steam Deck or ROG Ally, and seemingly has its own gimmicks and trade-offs, which we're going to discuss right now. But first, you can find Lenovo's spec sheet on their gaming community page in the description below, since some news sites have misleading and wrong information about it. So here's the good. Probably has a working micro SD reader. Rest in peace, Ally. It has not one, but two USB-C ports. One on the top and one on the bottom of the device, which I'm kind of curious about how you're going to be able to plug in something to both if it's also being held up by the kickstand. These USB ports have Thunderbolt or USB 4 support, so that means that they will have normal eGPU support instead of XG Mobile like the ROG Ally. Another good point is that the controllers are detachable. You can use this as a tablet or use it with the glasses, or probably really any other different types of glasses or headsets out there. Then it has the vertical mouse option, which is pretty gimmicky, but may come in handy when you're doing some troubleshooting. Personally, if I'm at a desk, I'm gonna be using my mouse, my real gaming mouse. And it's not that hard to pack my gaming mouse if I want to take it traveling with me. It's not really going to take up that much more space for much more comfort. One of the biggest things, the screen. It's beautiful. Or at least it looks beautiful, and everyone else says in these videos that it's extremely nice to look at. There's no doubts about that being a very solid point for this device. This has faster RAM than the ROG Ally at 7500 megahertz, but this is really only going to give you possibly a 5 to 10% performance increase at the same resolution and refresh rate compared to the ROG Ally, but that's kind of still speculative. We'll really have to see what this device can do head to head in person. Then it has the Hall effect joystick, which are great because they prevent drift, yada yada, blah blah blah. Everyone cares about drift. Moving on, we have integer scaling for resolution, so 800p won't look as smeary, because this device, although it has a native 1600p resolution, you're not going to be gaming with modern games at 1600p unless they're 2D or extremely well optimized. It's just not going to offer the same performance that you would expect, especially with the screen being at 144 Hz or up to 144 Hz. The next thing is that the NVMe is a 2242, which means that it typically have DRAM also included in them. They run a little hotter because they consume more power, but they perform better. Not that the NVMe has ever really been a huge bottleneck in these devices, but because we're limited with 16 gigabytes of RAM on this, you're going to be using your page and swap files quite a bit with Windows, and so it will help with things like micro stutters. Now on to the bad. This display is a portrait display, like all other devices before the ROG Ally, and apparently continuing down this trend, old games will hate this. They require hacky workarounds like DXWND to actually play those games. You may say, I only care about modern games, which is great, but anytime you install drivers or you reinstall Windows or anything that's outside of the cookie cutter experience that they've given you, you're going to have a flip screen. You're gonna have to flip it back. It's just one of those things that unfortunately there's not a lot of manufacturers out there right now that are producing landscape screens at this size. So Lenovo is taking tablet displays, just like the Steam Deck is actually a portrait display as well, and they're retrofitting it into these new handhelds. Hopefully, as these handhelds continue down next generation, we'll start seeing a lot more landscape screens in this size. The next downside is controller charging. We don't know exactly how long these controllers will last, but you're gonna have to connect them back up to your device because all the charging appears to happen through there. It doesn't appear that they have any ports to charge externally, so you'll just always have to make sure that it's connected to the device. Device is powered on or plugged in probably so that it can receive charging, assuming that it's not going to be charging when it's in sleep mode. So there's some things to be considered there for charging. The next is that in all these videos, it seems that the detaching and reattaching of these controllers is noted as being janky or very difficult. And based on what they're saying, this experience is not quite like a Switch experience. It's not as smooth feeling. So I'm just a little concerned that these may run into some issues if you're detaching and reattaching often. You may have some wear and tear Additionally, with the weight of the device, you may unwanted stress on some portions, but this is all speculative. Next, we're going to move on to the controllers being wireless. It looks like when they're plugged in, the RGB lights blink, indicating that these are actually wireless when they're disconnected from the device, and then they are wired when they reconnect to the device. Now, that's cool. However, in Windows, when it detects a device that's been removed and re-added, it throws off some of these games. Some of these games, when you launch them, they go into detect a controller if it exists, then they'll bring in controller mode, and if you lose the controller for any reason, you have to restart the game. Now, most modern game developers have included in the middle of the game, if your device disconnects, it switches over to a mouse and keyboard layout. When your controller reconnects, then it goes to the controller layout, which is what should happen. But unfortunately, with a lot of older games and even some modern games, you need to relaunch the game every time with the controller connected for it to see the controller and continue. I foresee these controllers, as they're detaching and reattaching in Windows, you're going to have some kind of technical bugs and glitches here and there with Windows behavior, with Lenovo's controller software. These are some things that I don't think are going to be a perfect experience, and I don't think are going to be easily rectified. They may be the bane or main problem of this system. Moving on, nobody's really talked about how comfortable it is because, well, everyone's just kind of demoing it for maybe 20 or 30 minutes or whatnot. So they're not really getting a chance to play around with it. Now, just from what I can see, it doesn't look as comfortable as the Steam Deck, and you know, people use the Steam Deck as their baseline of what is good and what is bad for these handhelds. The Steam Deck still, to me personally, has the best comfort or ergonomic design, and this looks to be going a little bit backwards with the fact that the controllers are flat on the front. The Legion Go is kind of just mirroring the Switch on when it comes to the front of the device. It's questionable. Next thing is the higher resolution. Now, why is this a bad thing? This is normally not a con of a device, but with the Z1E chip, it kind of will be, because the Ally already struggles at 1080p. Most people are dropping it down to 900p or even 720p and using FSR so that they can play their game still at 60 hertz. Again, this is one of those things where they're throwing in these really high-end specs to try to market and advertise it as bigger and better, right? And unfortunately, it's not going to perform well in that unless you're using it for media or 2D or indie games, things that are much lighter. So expect on this device to be using 800p at 60 hertz and then maybe using FSR. However, 800p, like we talked about before in the good, is that you have integer scaling here with this because it's a quad HD screen. Essentially what that means is if you're at a lower resolution on a bigger screen, even though the pixel density is less, it's still going to look pretty good. A lot of people swear by this, so we'll see how it really looks in person. It doesn't look like anyone on any videos have actually tried to run anything in 800p and give an example or a side-by-side comparison yet, but we'll see as time goes on. Next, we're going to talk about the ratio of the screen. It's a 16:10 display. Normally, this isn't an issue. However, in certain games, they don't offer support for these display ratios. They normally offer what's considered high definition, like 720p, 1080p, 1440p, 4K. Those are the standards that a lot of games are developed and will not let you cycle through the other resolutions and change your aspect ratio. So what that means in this device is you have these really thin, nice looking bezels on the Legion Go, but when you have to run a game at 720 or 1080p, the black bezel on the top, it's going to be shifting the screen down, and so what you're going to see is a bigger black bar on top, and you can see this in some of the demos for Hot Wheels. It's not at its native resolution. Lastly, for the bad portion, the SSD is a 2242 NVMe, which is that it is less common. The price will go up for replacements, much like the 2230s did when the Steam Deck came out. Everyone just started buying them and upgrading them. However, this device is not only priced competitively, but they actually are smart about how they're upselling the 1 terabyte. It's only $50 more at $750 for the 1 terabyte as opposed to the 512 gig at $699. So a $50 difference is kind of a no-brainer to me, to not have to open this and modify it and risk risk possibly breaking or messing something up, unless you're planning to do some crazy mod and add in like a 4 terabyte or something and retrofit a 2230. You can do that. It doesn't seem necessary to me personally. Totally your call, as I only like to have maybe like 5 games on a handheld at any given time and maybe some indies. But it does look like the NVMe is very easy to replace. It's located on the bottom right corner. You can see in that in Dave 2D's video. Lastly, I want to go over kind of the ugly or the myth busts here. No VRR, so no variable refresh rate. This is very bad news because the RG Ally is apparently the first device to have this. You really can't have variable refresh rate on a portrait display. When the leaks came out for the Legion Go, they showed off that it was a VRR display, but when the official trailer launched, it was missing it. And now we've seen in videos the active signal mode of this device is showing that it is not a landscape screen. If you haven't used VRR, it just makes it the whole experience of playing a game look a whole lot smoother to you in person. It's a little harder to see it over a recording. For variable refresh rate, even if you don't have it, then maybe you have options to adjust the refresh rate lower like you can on the Steam Deck. You can do 40 hertz, 30 hertz, etc. But this only has an option in Lenovo software, at least, for 60 hertz or 144 hertz. There's no other options in between or below. But with Windows, there's an application called Custom Resolution Utility that some community members may be able to contribute to and unlock certain refresh rates that aren't readily available right now in the Lenovo software. That's kind of all speculatory at this time. The display itself may not be able to go below that 60 hertz. One thing I also want to throw in here, there's a myth bust about the TDP. It was stated that this device can only go up to 20 watt TDP with up to 25 watt TGP, so 5 more watts for the graphics processor. This has been busted. There was a video by Techspert that shows that you can set it up to 48 watts within Lenovo's own software, both in the menu settings as well as in the side panel quick menu. That's very good news because most were concerned because of the singular fan, and then they mentioned this 20 watt mode, and I think the marketing is just it's just missing some things important. I think that image, actually I'll try to get that up on the screen, but it showed 20 watt right next to the power profile talking about the fan in quiet mode. So I'm assuming actually that 20 watt is their quiet mode profile, but we'll see on that as more information is revealed. The last thing I want to talk about is the weight of this. 1.8 pounds, man, with the controllers. It's just it's a lot. Astronomically huge to me. Maybe it's not a deal breaker for some, but this is really stressing the point of how big can you go without it being uncomfortable. Let me know what you guys think. If there's something I missed, please leave it in the comments. Let me know what I missed out on, what's most important to you for this device, or why you're getting it or not getting it. Let me know. I'll see you guys next time.